welcome to Spellbound Stories, where we explore the mysteries and legends of the ancient world. I'm your host, Black, and today we're going to dive into the life of one of the most fascinating and influential women in history, Cleopatra, the teenage queen of Egypt. Cleopatra was not only a beautiful and charismatic ruler, but also a cunning and ambitious politician who forged alliances with two of the most powerful men in Rome, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. She was also a patron of arts and sciences who spoke several languages and studied philosophy, astronomy, and medicine. She was the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled Egypt for almost 3 centuries, and the last pharaoh of Egypt, before it became a province of the Roman Empire. But how much do we really know about Cleopatra? How did she become the queen of Egypt at the age of 18? What was the secret behind her seduction of Caesar and Antony? How did she influence Roman politics and culture during her reign? What was the role of Cleopatra in the civil war between Caesar and Pompey, and later between Antony and Octavian? How did Cleopatra and Antony commit suicide after their defeat at the Battle of Actium? What was the legacy of Cleopatra for Egypt and the world? In this video, we're going to reveal 10 secrets of Cleopatra's life that you may not have heard before. These secrets will show you a different side of Cleopatra, beyond the myths and stereotypes that have surrounded her for centuries. You'll discover how Cleopatra was a master of deception, manipulation, and propaganda, who used her charm, intelligence, and wealth to achieve her goals and protect her kingdom. You'll also learn how Cleopatra was a visionary leader who dreamed of creating a new world order where Egypt and Rome would coexist in harmony and prosperity. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to get notified of our new videos. We upload 2 videos every week on Mondays and Thursdays, where we explore the secrets and stories of the ancient world. If you enjoy our content, please give us a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. We'd love to hear from you. Are you ready to uncover the secrets of Cleopatra, the teenage queen of Egypt? Then let's get started. Secret 1. Cleopatra was not the first or the only Cleopatra in the history of Egypt. She was the 7th woman in the Ptolemaic dynasty to bear the name, which means glory of the father in Greek. The Ptolemaic dynasty was founded by Ptolemy the Soter, one of the generals of Alexander the Great, who conquered Egypt in 332 BCE and established a Hellenistic kingdom that lasted for almost 3 centuries. The Ptolemies were of Macedonian Greek origin, and they spoke Greek as their official language. They also followed the Greek custom of marrying their siblings, which resulted in a complex and incestuous family tree. Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy the Auletes, who ruled Egypt from 80 to 58 BCE and from 55 to 51 BCE. He was a weak and unpopular king who had to flee to Rome several times to secure his throne from his rivals. He had 6 children, 4 of whom were named Cleopatra. The eldest was Cleopatra VI Tryphena, who briefly ruled as queen in 58 BCE, but was soon killed by her sister Berenice IV. The second was Cleopatra V Selene, who married the king of Cyrenaica and became the mother of the famous rebel queen Juba II of Mauritania. The third was Cleopatra VII, the subject of this video, who became the sole ruler of Egypt after the deaths of her father and brothers. The fourth was Cleopatra VIII, who married 3 of her brothers and became the queen of Syria. Cleopatra VII distinguished herself from her predecessors by learning the Egyptian language and culture. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler to do so, and the only one to be able to communicate directly with her subjects. She also adopted the traditional title of pharaoh and the role of the living embodiment of the goddess Isis. She presented herself as the defender of Egypt's independence and the protector of its ancient religion. She built temples, monuments, and statues to honor the Egyptian gods and goddesses, and she participated in religious ceremonies and festivals. She also minted coins with her image and name in both Greek and Egyptian scripts to appeal to both audiences. By doing so, she gained the respect and loyalty of the Egyptian people, who saw her as one of their own. Secret 2. Cleopatra was not actually Egyptian, but of Macedonian Greek descent. Her family, the Ptolemaic dynasty, ruled Egypt for almost 3 centuries after the death of Alexander the Great. Alexander had conquered Egypt in 332 BCE and appointed one of his generals, Ptolemy I Soter, as the governor of the region. After Alexander's death, Ptolemy declared himself the king of Egypt and established a Hellenistic kingdom that lasted until the Roman conquest in 30 BCE. Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy XIII Auletes, the 10th king of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and traced her lineage back to Ptolemy I Soter, who was a distant relative of Alexander the Great. Secret 3. Cleopatra's beauty is indeed a myth that has been perpetuated by later writers and artists who were influenced by the Roman propaganda against her. The ancient sources that depict her image on coins and statues show that she had a strong jawline and a hooked nose, which do not conform to the modern standards of beauty. However, her attractiveness was more due to her intellect, wit, charm, and voice than her physical appearance. She was a highly educated and cultured woman who spoke several languages and studied philosophy, astronomy, and medicine. She was also a skilled diplomat and politician who knew how to use her charm and charisma to win over her allies and enemies. She had a captivating voice, which Plutarch described as sweet and harmonious. She was able to seduce two of the most powerful men in Rome, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, not by her looks, but by her personality and intelligence. Secret 4. Cleopatra lived closer to the time of the moon landing than she did to the construction of the pyramids. This is because the Great Pyramid of Giza, the oldest and largest of the 3 pyramids in the Giza complex, was built around 2560 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. Cleopatra, on the other hand, was born in 69 BCE during the Ptolemaic dynasty that ruled Egypt after the conquest of Alexander the Great. Therefore, the difference between the completion of the Great Pyramid and the birth of Cleopatra is about 2,091 years. The moon landing, also known as Apollo 11, was the first manned mission to land on the lunar surface, which occurred on July 20, 1969. The mission was led by NASA, the United States Space Agency, and involved 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Armstrong and Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon, while Collins orbited the moon in the command module. The difference between the birth of Cleopatra and the moon landing is about 2,038 years. Therefore, Cleopatra lived closer to the time of the moon landing, 2,038 years, than she did to the construction of the pyramids, 2,091 years. This fact illustrates how ancient the Egyptian civilization was, and how long it lasted before the Roman conquest. It also shows how recent the human exploration of space is, and how much progress has been made in science and technology in the last century. Secret 5. Cleopatra was indeed a master of deception and manipulation, who used her charm, intelligence, and wealth to achieve her political goals and protect her kingdom. Here are some examples of how she deceived and manipulated her enemies and allies, smuggling herself into Caesar's palace in a carpet. In 48 BCE, Cleopatra was in exile after her brother and co-ruler Ptolemy XIII rebelled against her. She wanted to ally with Julius Caesar, who was in Alexandria, to settle the dispute between the siblings. To avoid being captured by Ptolemy's guards, she had herself rolled up in a carpet and delivered to Caesar's palace as a gift. Caesar was impressed by her boldness and cunning, and became her lover and supporter, faking her own death to test Antony's loyalty. In 31 BCE, Cleopatra and Mark Antony faced Octavian's army at the Battle of Actium. Antony was defeated and fled to Egypt, where he heard a false rumor that Cleopatra had killed herself. He was so devastated that he stabbed himself in the stomach but did not die immediately. He was then brought to Cleopatra's tomb, where she revealed that she was still alive and had faked her death to see if he still loved her. They died in each other's arms, spreading rumors about her divine ancestry and powers. Cleopatra claimed to be the reincarnation of the goddess Isis and the daughter of the god Amun. She also said that she had supernatural powers, such as the ability to control the Nile floods and the weather. She used these claims to enhance her authority and prestige among the Egyptians and the foreigners. She also used them to seduce Caesar and Antony, who were fascinated by her mystique and exoticism. Secret 6. Cleopatra was indeed a patron of arts and sciences, who supported the scholars and artists of the Great Library of Alexandria, the largest and most famous library of the ancient world. The library was part of a larger institution called the Museum, which was a center of learning and research that attracted scholars from various fields and disciplines. Cleopatra funded the library and the museum and provided them with books, manuscripts, and equipment. She also invited and hosted many famous scholars and philosophers, such as Dionysius of Halicarnassus, Strabo, and Plutarch, who wrote about her life and times. Cleopatra was not only a patron, but also a student of arts and sciences. She studied philosophy, astronomy, and medicine, among other subjects, and wrote several books and treatises on various topics. Some of her achievements include writing a medical treatise on hair loss, which was cited by the Roman physician Galen as a source of information and remedies; inventing a perfume factory, which was located on the island of Pharaohs, near Alexandria. The factory produced various kinds of fragrances and cosmetics, using exotic ingredients and advanced techniques. Cleopatra was known for her love of perfumes and used them to enhance her allure and influence, creating a new calendar based on the Egyptian solar year, which consisted of 365 days divided into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 extra days at the end of the year. The calendar was more accurate than the Roman calendar, which was based on the lunar cycle and had to be adjusted by adding an extra month every few years. Cleopatra's calendar was later adopted by Julius Caesar, who introduced it to Rome as the Julian calendar. Cleopatra's contributions to arts and sciences show that she was not only a powerful and ambitious ruler, but also a cultured and intelligent woman who had a passion for learning and innovation. She was one of the most influential and fascinating women in history, and her legacy lives on in the works of art, literature, and film that have been inspired by her story. Secret 7. Cleopatra was indeed a visionary leader who dreamed of creating a new world order where Egypt and Rome would coexist in harmony and prosperity. She tried to achieve this by forming alliances with Caesar and Antony, two of the most powerful men in Rome, and by giving birth to their children. Cleopatra saw Egypt as the rightful heir of Alexander the Great's empire and wanted to restore its glory and influence in the Mediterranean world. She also recognized the rising power of Rome and sought to establish a friendly and equal relationship with it, rather than becoming its subject or enemy. She believed that by uniting Egypt and Rome through marriage and offspring, she could create a new dynasty that would rule both lands with wisdom and justice. To this end, she allied herself with Julius Caesar, who was the dictator of Rome and the leader of the civil war against Pompey. She met him in Alexandria in 48 BCE and became his lover and partner. She gave birth to his son, Caesarion, in 47 BCE, and hoped that he would be recognized as Caesar's heir and the future king of Egypt and Rome. She also accompanied Caesar to Rome in 46 BCE and lived with him in his villa until his assassination in 44 BCE. After Caesar's death, she allied herself with Mark Antony, who was one of Caesar's generals and the leader of the triumvirate that ruled Rome. She met him in Tarsus in 41 BCE and became his lover and partner. She gave birth to his twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, in 40 BCE, and to his son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, in 36 BCE. She hoped that they would inherit their father's territories and become the rulers of the East. She also supported Antony in his war against Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and the leader of the rival faction in Rome. However, Cleopatra's vision of a new world order was not shared by many Romans, who saw her as a foreign queen and a threat to their republic. They accused her of seducing and corrupting Caesar and Antony, and of plotting to conquer Rome with her barbarian army. They also denied the legitimacy of her children, and claimed that they were bastards and usurpers. Octavian, who wanted to become the sole ruler of Rome, used these accusations to wage a propaganda war against Cleopatra and Antony, and to justify his invasion of Egypt in 30 BCE. He defeated them at the Battle of Actium and pursued them to Alexandria, where they committed suicide. He then annexed Egypt to Rome and declared himself the first emperor, Augustus. Cleopatra's dream of a new world order died with her, but her legacy lived on in history and culture. She was one of the most influential and fascinating women in history, and her story inspired many works of art, literature, and film. She was also the last pharaoh of Egypt, and the end of her reign marked the end of an ancient civilization and the beginning of a new era. Secret 8. Cleopatra played a significant role in 2 civil wars in Rome, which shaped the fate of the Roman Republic and the Ptolemaic Kingdom. Here is a brief summary of how she was involved in these conflicts. The civil war between Caesar and Pompey, 49 to 45 BCE. Cleopatra sided with Julius Caesar, who was the dictator of Rome and the leader of the civil war against Pompey, his former ally and rival. She met Caesar in Alexandria in 48 BCE and became his lover and partner. She gave birth to his son, Caesarion, in 47 BCE and hoped that he would be recognized as Caesar's heir and the future king of Egypt and Rome. She also provided Caesar with military and financial support and helped him secure his victory over Pompey and his allies in Egypt and elsewhere. the civil war between Antony and Octavian, 3230 BCE. Cleopatra sided with Mark Antony, who was one of Caesar's generals and the leader of the triumvirate that ruled Rome after Caesar's death. She met Antony in Tarsus in 41 BCE and became his lover and partner. She gave birth to his twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, in 40 BCE, and to his son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, in 36 BCE. She hoped that they would inherit their father's territories and become the rulers of the East. She also supported Antony in his war against Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and the leader of the rival faction in Rome. She provided Antony with military and financial support and joined him in the decisive naval battle against Octavian at Actium in 31 BCE. She also used her propaganda campaigns to portray herself and Antony as the rightful successors of Caesar and the defenders of Egypt's independence. Cleopatra's involvement in these civil wars had a significant impact on the outcome of these conflicts and the history of Rome and Egypt. She helped Caesar and Antony to gain power and influence in the Roman world and to challenge the authority and legitimacy of their enemies. She also tried to secure the future of her dynasty and her kingdom by allying herself with the most powerful men in Rome and by giving birth to their children. However, her actions also provoked the hostility and resentment of many Romans, who saw her as a foreign queen and a threat to their republic. They accused her of seducing and corrupting Caesar and Antony, and of plotting to conquer Rome with her barbarian army. They also denied the legitimacy of her children, and claimed that they were bastards and usurpers. Octavian, who wanted to become the sole ruler of Rome, used these accusations to wage a propaganda war against Cleopatra and Antony, and to justify his invasion of Egypt in 30 BCE. He defeated them at the Battle of Actium and pursued them to Alexandria, where they committed suicide. He then annexed Egypt to Rome and declared himself the first emperor. Augustus Cleopatra's involvement in these civil wars ended her reign and her dynasty, and marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. She was one of the most influential and fascinating women in history, and her story inspired many works of art, literature, and film. She was also the last pharaoh of Egypt, and the end of her reign marked the end of an ancient civilization and the beginning of a new era. Secret 9. Cleopatra and Antony committed suicide after their defeat at the Battle of Actium, which was a turning point in the history of Rome and Egypt. Here is a brief explanation of how they lost the battle, how they escaped to Alexandria, and how they ended their lives. The Battle of Actium, 31 BCE. Cleopatra and Antony faced Octavian, the adopted son and heir of Julius Caesar, who wanted to become the sole ruler of Rome. Octavian had declared war on Cleopatra, accusing her of seducing and corrupting Antony and of plotting to conquer Rome with her barbarian army. Cleopatra and Antony had a large fleet of ships, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by Octavian's navy, which was led by his admiral Agrippa. The battle took place near the coast of Greece at a promontory called Actium. Cleopatra and Antony tried to break through Octavian's blockade, but they failed and suffered heavy losses. Cleopatra decided to flee with her ships, and Antony followed her, abandoning his remaining forces. Octavian claimed victory and pursued them to Egypt. The Siege of Alexandria, 30 BCE. Cleopatra and Antony reached Alexandria, where they prepared to defend themselves against Octavian's invasion. They had some loyal troops and allies, but they also faced desertion and betrayal. Octavian arrived in Egypt with his army and navy and besieged Alexandria. He cut off the city's supply lines and communication and offered amnesty to anyone who would surrender. He also spread rumors that Cleopatra was dead, hoping to demoralize Antony. Cleopatra and Antony tried to resist, but they soon realized that they had no hope of victory. The suicide of Cleopatra and Antony, 30 BCE. Cleopatra and Antony decided to kill themselves rather than fall into Octavian's hands. They had different methods of suicide according to the ancient sources. Antony stabbed himself with his sword after hearing a false report that Cleopatra had died. He was brought to Cleopatra's tomb, where she was hiding, and died in her arms. Cleopatra poisoned herself, either by allowing an asp, a venomous snake, to bite her, or by applying a toxic ointment or a sharp object to her skin. She died with her two loyal maids, Iris and Charmian, by her side. Octavian was informed of their deaths, and he tried to capture Cleopatra alive, but he was too late. He ordered that their bodies be buried together in an unknown location. Cleopatra and Antony's suicide marked the end of their love story and the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the Roman Republic. Octavian became the first emperor of Rome, and Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. Cleopatra and Antony's story inspired many works of art, literature, and film, and they remain one of the most famous and tragic couples in history. Secret 10. Cleopatra's legacy for Egypt and the world is immense and enduring. Here is a brief explanation of how she was the last pharaoh of Egypt, how her death changed the course of history, and how her story inspired many works of art, literature, and film. Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt, and the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty that ruled Egypt for almost 3 centuries. She was a descendant of Ptolemy the Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals, who founded the dynasty in 305 BCE. She became the queen of Egypt in 51 BCE, after the death of her father, Ptolemy the Auletes. She ruled with her 2 younger brothers, Ptolemy III and Ptolemy IV, and her son, Ptolemy the Caesarion, whom she claimed was the son of Julius Caesar. She was a powerful and ambitious ruler who tried to preserve Egypt's independence and glory in the face of the rising power of Rome. She was also a patron of arts and sciences who supported the scholars and artists of the Great Library of Alexandria and studied philosophy, astronomy, and medicine. Cleopatra's death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of the Roman rule in Egypt. She died by suicide in 30 BCE after her defeat by Octavian, the adopted son and heir of Julius Caesar, who wanted to become the sole ruler of Rome. Octavian had declared war on Cleopatra, accusing her of seducing and corrupting Mark Antony, one of Caesar's generals and the leader of the triumvirate that ruled Rome after Caesar's death. Cleopatra and Antony had a romantic and political alliance and had 3 children together. They fought against Octavian in the Civil War, but lost the decisive naval battle at Actium in 31 BCE. They fled to Alexandria, where they were besieged by Octavian's forces. Cleopatra and Antony killed themselves rather than fall into Octavian's hands. Octavian captured Egypt and declared himself the first emperor of Rome, Augustus. He also killed Cleopatra's son, Caesarion, and took her other children to Rome as his prisoners. Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, and its ancient civilization came to an end. Cleopatra's story inspired many works of art, literature, and film throughout history, and she remains one of the most intriguing and influential women in history. She was portrayed by many writers and artists such as Plutarch, Shakespeare, Dryden, Shaw, Mankiewicz, and others, who depicted her as a complex and fascinating character who combined beauty, intelligence, charm, and ambition. She was also seen as a symbol of female power, romance, and tragedy, who defied the norms and expectations of her time. She was admired and vilified, praised and blamed, loved and hated by different people and cultures. She was one of the most influential and fascinating women in history, and her legacy lives on in the works of art, literature, and film that have been inspired by her story. And that's it for today's video, where we revealed 10 secrets of Cleopatra, the teenage queen of Egypt. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new and interesting about this amazing woman and her life. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to get notified of our new videos. We upload 2 videos every week, on Mondays and Thursdays, where we explore the secrets and stories of the ancient world. If you have any questions or comments about Cleopatra or anything else related to the ancient world, please leave them below. We'd love to hear from you and answer your queries. And if you have any suggestions or requests for future topics, please let us know. We're always looking for new ideas and inspiration. Thank you so much for watching Spellbound Stories, where we bring the past to life. I'm your host, Black, and I'll see you next time when we'll uncover the mysteries of the legendary city of Atlantis. Until then, stay curious and stay spellbound.